In it to win it, in it together. This is episode 3 of Immigrant Invincible, on location with Sonia Ortega at Plaza del Sol in St. Paul, Minnesota.
They can chase us down, but we will always win. Never feeling wrong, cause we don't belong. And getting high enough, we're invincible.
Hello and welcome to Immigrant Invincible. I'm Ryan Garza from NonPod, the nonprofit podcast community, here with the host of the show, Aneta Toporowska. Aneta, how you doing?
Hello, Ryan. It's been a while. Yeah, I'm a very busy summer. What about you?
I'm doing great. What have you been up to?
Just really busy with the kids. Kids are off school and having a lot of sports activities, and I'm getting ready for my own fitness challenges, Warrior Dash this weekend, so I'm pretty excited.
And business is good?
Yes, business is really good, expanding my law firm, and some great things are coming up, so I'm really thrilled.
Well, in the midst of all that craziness, we were able to sit down and talk to a friend of yours. What can you tell us about today's guest?
Yeah, her name is Sonia Ortega. She's from Mexico, and she's a remarkable human being in general. She's an entrepreneur and activist here in Twin Cities.
And what's interesting about this interview is that, so we recorded it a little ways back, and unfortunately, some of the things we talked about then are just as relevant now as they were at the time. We talked about some of the issues around the crisis at the border, families being detained and separated. We also talked about some of the challenges that immigrants face once they get here. We also talked about U visas and the fact that when immigrants are detained, they often face a couple of different sets of challenges. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sad that the current political arena is, deepens those challenges for immigrants, and some disgraceful things are happening right now. But it's mostly about the disconnect between state and federal government and what immigrants are facing, when they're detained, and especially now with the increased ICE detention rates. That's definitely not something that we're looking forward to.
And the whole process is just kind of like ground to a halt right now, isn't it? I mean, it's not so much that they're saying no, it's just they're saying, like, wait. And it's getting pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah,
and it's really heartbreaking to hear the stories about the children being detained and the conditions they're living in.
And what can you tell us about the U visas? I know you guys talked about that a little more, but we wanted to give people a little background and some of the terminology.
Yeah, sure. The U visas are visas created by immigration system to give you a non-immigrant status. So the only thing is that that does at some point it could lead to permanent residency, but it was created for a non-immigrant basis. It's set aside for victims of certain crimes who have suffered mental or physical abuse and are helpful to law enforcement and government officials in investigation and prosecution of those crimes.
Which is important because you also talked with Sonia about how oftentimes immigrants are afraid to report crimes.
That's right. They wouldn't want to participate. They were afraid of consequences if they were helping government. So that would definitely alleviate that problem.
And so aside from some of those challenges that some immigrants are facing, there are also additional everyday challenges that pretty much all immigrants face, regardless of their background, especially if you have an accent.
Yeah, it was cool to talk about Sonia about those challenges. We have to fight every day to keep moving forward. Even we have to prove ourselves to others all the time to prove that we deserve a chance. Overcome our accents, and I was able to use that to my advantage, but it wasn't always easy. And all of us immigrants definitely have to struggle with that every day.
We talk about how sometimes people will underestimate you because of your accent.
I definitely won a lot of cases of people who thought I don't speak English and would never win.
So you guys also talk about the power of education and how important that can be as an immigrant.
Yes, I'm a huge believer, just like Sonia, in education. I believe that's the only thing that is certain is education. I put my life on hold in the past to make sure that I obtain the best education possible, and I definitely make sure my children do the same. The
other thing that was really powerful to me about the interview is Sonia's unwavering and unshakable belief in the American dream. And you would think someone with her background that's faced the challenges that she has and has had to overcome the things that she has would be, someone with that experience would be like the last person to believe in the American dream and to believe that it was achievable. But that's definitely not the case with Sonia.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most remarkable thing is that for some people, American dream is money, it's millions of dollars or security, big homes and a yacht. But for her, it's different. It's the legacy. She mentioned that she doesn't have children, but she is so involved in the community, helping everybody that she can help to make sure that she puts the imprint in the society here and leaves something behind her.
She is definitely a remarkable human being. I'm really excited for people to hear this interview. So we're going to go ahead and listen in. Then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more. Thanks for listening to the Immigrant Invincible podcast, and we'll be right back.
Thank you. Enjoy. Immigrant Invincible on location in East St. Paul, and we are here with
Sonia Ortega from Plaza del Sol.
And Sonia, tell me, where are you from originally?
I came from Oaxaca, Mexico, about 30 years ago.
And where is Oaxaca?
Oaxaca is south of Mexico City. It's about an hour flying. We are on the ocean side of the country.
And do you still have family back there?
Yes, I have brothers and sisters there. I come from a large family, so we are all scattered all over the country and here in Mexico.
And how often do you get to go back home?
I try to go every year. We have a tradition there where we have like a state party, and we go there in July.
I think it's really important to go back home once in a while, isn't it?
Yes, we are a very traditional state. We have a large variety of foods, music, culture, and we share every year. Everybody from different regions of the state comes into the city to share traditions, food, culture, and that's why we go.
You mentioned you came here 30 years ago. Please tell me, what was your experience first time you came to the United States?
Well, it was, I think that it has always been the same. You know, we have our struggles now, and we hear a lot of complaints of how the struggles are with the new administrations. And looking back, I think that it has always been the same for us. When I first moved here, I lived in the border, so the experiences were different. And I moved to Minnesota about 11 years ago, and we thought it was easier here.
Tell me about the experience on the border.
It was back when I moved here, when we were undocumented, and when we went to the beach, sometimes we couldn't get out of the car because immigration was cruising around. If we wanted to go to the grocery store, you had to take the bus, and we didn't have cell phones, so we had to rely on relatives and friends to give you the heads up, hey, immigration is at the bus stop. So we would avoid those spots. And now it's just a little different. Because I think that is because of social media that we're more aware of how things are. But I think that we had struggles back then. They were different, and it wasn't so public. It wasn't so available for everybody to know.
And you mentioned that you thought Minnesota would be different.
When I moved to Minnesota a while back, and when I moved here, we didn't have, the community was very small. The Latino community was very small, and it has been growing. And now we see different struggles from people in the community that we didn't have 13 years ago, because there were almost no immigrants here. Finding labor was difficult, and now there's more labor, but we're facing different challenges.
And on average, do you know how many people of your heritage are here in Minnesota?
They say that St. Paul is the fastest growing city in the state of Minnesota. I think that part of it is because of more new immigrants every day. And a lot of immigrants that are struggling in other states are choosing Minnesota to move into because there is more opportunity.
And what opportunities did you find for yourself in Minnesota?
Back when I moved here, I looked for a job doing restaurant management, which is what I was doing in California. And back then, for a job that I was doing in California, I would be getting paid double my salary in Minnesota. So it was a better opportunity for me. And that is why I moved here. It was a better job. Doing the same thing, but I was getting a lot more money.
And why do you think this is such a big difference in salary?
For every employment in California back then, for every job, we had maybe 20 applicants. In Minnesota, it's the other way around. For every 20 jobs, there was one applicant. It's supply and demand. So that's what I learned. I used to read the paper back then and see how many jobs were available, and I sent my resume. And I got calls from almost every place I sent my resume to. A difference from California was that if I sent my resume, you didn't get as many calls.
So tell me about business ownership. How did it start, and what are you thriving at right now?
Well, I think that my first business I started was 10 years ago, and I started a commercial cleaning business, and that was a good business at the time. Everything is supply and demand. Now there's more companies and there's more immigrants, so the demand on companies has decreased because there's a lot more companies that there were 10 years ago. So now the market changes, and the only way to survive is that you evolve. So we have to think about how we're going to evolve, and you have to diversify it in order to continue to move forward.
Any other obstacles you had to overcome as an immigrant on top of those obstacles that business owners face?
I think that trying to stay positive, we don't want to acknowledge the challenges that we face, but they're there. The first challenge that you have to face is the fact that people look at you, and being a person of color, you already have a challenge because people will judge you just by looking at you. They don't care what you know, they don't know what you're good at, but they will judge you just by looking at you. And you have to prove every day that you're good. You have to prove that you know what you're doing. Every single day you have to prove to others that you deserve a chance. In every area, when you go to apply for a new business license, when you go to apply for a building permit, you have to overcome the fact that from when you go in and fill up an application of anything, people will look at you and will question what are you going to do and how you're going to do it. It has been my experience, and it is unfortunate that sometimes, even with my own attorney, he would make comments that were inappropriate, and I would tell him, you have the wrong impression of immigrants. Not every immigrant or not every person of color does illegal things. But that is the perception, unfortunately, that we have to face. And we have to learn to overcome. And we have to fight every day to keep moving forward. Sometimes it's not growth, but you know that you have to move forward. And a lot of times we can't focus on the challenges we have. We have to assume that that is how everybody faces challenges. And we have to learn to overcome everything that comes in your path. So I think that every person of color has to learn that that is how it is, And with that, you have to learn to navigate the system the best that you can.
And I have experienced myself, having an accent to deal with that perception and that judgment from other people. How do you best deal with it, faced with such a, we can say discrimination?
I think that the one thing that we have to acknowledge is that ignorance from other people will question, and ignorance from other people will focus on that. We had this saying in our culture, I speak with an accent, I don't think with one. Because that is one of the things that you have to prove. Sometimes I encounter people that will question whether I understand everything that, that we're talking about. And, we learn to be polite and say, no, you feel free to express yourself, and if I don't understand something, I will ask. But it exists. I think that society, thankfully, is changing a little bit with more progressives coming out. But us as immigrants and as people of color have to keep educating other people about who we are and where we come from.
I do the same thing in my field as a lawyer. They think I might not understand, and then they lose the case. So there you go. I always say that. So tell me, what advice would you give to young immigrants starting in this country, just coming here or graduating from schools and thinking about starting, maybe opening a business or doing something, pursuing their dreams? What advice would you give them at this point?
When I was a kid, my brothers always told me, the only thing that is certain and the only thing that you can keep is your education. We got here, we moved to this country as adults. So we did the best we thought we could do with the resources we had at the time. Right now, we have a new generation of, there are the children of immigrants. And I think that what we need to focus on as parents is educating our kids and teaching them that sometimes we compromise when we're willing to give up an education to get a good job. And we have to educate ourselves, because in life, it doesn't matter the risks that you take. Education is going to give you confidence, and is going to give you a future, is going to give you something to fall back onto. If you take an adventure in starting a new business and it doesn't work out, you have something to back your future. You can always go back to whatever training or trade or a career, if you're fortunate to be able to get that done, and still keep growing. In businesses are very risky, and the less education you have, the riskier they are. I have this philosophy that the worst thing a human being can have is fear. So with the challenges that we face, we have to risk. Deciding to take a career is also a risk, but it's a lower risk than if you start a business. We have to take advantage of the opportunities we have in this country, which are the opportunities that brought us here. We moved here because of the opportunity. And sometimes we get lazy, we get comfortable. They say that the only way to grow is within the discomfort. If you're uncomfortable in what you're doing, you're growing. If you're comfortable, comfort will keep you where you are. Comfort is not good for any human being, I don't think.
So tell me what the discomfort took you, and what kind of businesses did you try and succeeded in?
I have started a lot of businesses. Some of the businesses are not for my own doing. A lot of the businesses that I have started are for other families that have a dream. I'm a big believer in the American dream. And I think that I always thought about the American dream. And I didn't understand the concept of the American dream until we figure that we all have the same opportunity. They say that the American dream is the philosophy that anybody can be successful if they choose to do the work. And it is a lot of work. And success is it's a matter of perception. You can be successful at different things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be financially successful. There's other things that make a human being successful. You know, having children that are happy and are confident, to some people would be successful. I don't have any kids, so I focus on the community. And I see the problems that we have as a community, and then we try to contribute to solving some of the issues that we have.
And tell me, what are the ways you contributed to help that community?
I'm very involved in some of the problems we have. We have right now we have problems with families being separated, people that with undocumented immigrants don't have the right to have an identification, and as a community, that is a problem. Not just because there is no way to know who you're dealing with, but also because when somebody has an accident, how do we know who that person is? How would the police would know who that person is? Sometimes we find people that have been hit by cars, or they get into car accidents, bicycles that get hit by cars. And sadly enough, we have had to, the resource that we have is social media. And we have to post pictures of people that are injured or dead on social media, trying to figure out where the family members are, who that person is. And we have tried to talk to people in government to help us with the problem that we have.
And what was the reaction?
A lot of our politicians pretend to care. And I think that in order for people to care, they have to relate to your problem. If it's not, it is a humanitarian crisis, I believe. But nobody in government can relate to the problem that we have. Because when politicians are running, they will make promises, and then they forget what they promise. A lot of people are afraid to stand up to people that oppose your beliefs. And with that in mind, they're not willing to fight for anybody. So unfortunately, we don't have anybody in the political world that is willing to go against the system and say, this is what I believe in. And I believe that is because they can't relate to the pain that some minorities go through or some minorities have to face. The only way that you can relate to other people is if you have love for other people. And I don't think that politicians have love for our community.
Well, let's hope there's some improvement on that front in Minnesota. Let's talk about the UVs. As you mentioned, that you're helping some immigrants here in the community to do that. I know there's a big backlog, I believe, maybe over 70,000 visas, a backlog since probably 2016, and there's only 10,000 visas available every year. Tell us, what did you do in that category, and what is your hope for any changes?
Just from being around and I'm in a place where people will come and tell me their problems and their struggles, I have seen the fights that immigrants have to face. There is a disconnect between two systems, which is the state and the federal government. A lot of immigrants, when they get stopped for a traffic violation, they are put into the state system because they committed an offense. And some of these offenses were very small, driving without a license. And we, undocumented immigrants, don't have a right to have a license. So it is very common that they drive without a license. So they would get pulled over and then, be entered into the system. There was a time where for any offense, they were put into the Hennepin County Jail or the Ramsey County Jail, and they right away be sent to the Immigration Department. So we started a fight. The person incarcerated or detained would have to fight whether they were guilty or not guilty of whatever crime they were being accused of. In the process of their prosecution or their the due process, they would be sent to the Immigration Department. And that was a federal crime. So we were caught in two systems. And most of the immigrants would have to fight two systems. A lot of people don't analyze that. You needed an attorney to fight for the crime that you were accused of. In this case, would be driving without a license. And then on the other hand, you would have to get a different attorney to fight your deportation. But jails, sometimes immigrants did not have access to either one of the attorneys because in a lot of cases they get moved around because of jails being so crowded. So we found out that in the system, we found a lot of people that would qualify for some kind of visa. And it was a big problem to try to prove that you qualified for a visa or residence or whatever, because you were caught between two systems. So in the city of Minneapolis, which has been more flexible, and now with the new chief of police, we found some cases of people that would qualify for a U visa. So we went through the process of explaining to the city attorney, the chief of police, the commanders of the city of Minneapolis, of our problem. And we were fortunate enough that they took the time to listen to our concerns, and we were able to present it in a way that they would understand that we're not trying to defend criminals. We were just trying to help people that were good people and they were good in this society and hard workers, people of family, people that would that were an asset rather than a liability. And they did agree to taking 30 days to sign a U visa if the person qualified for one. And I was involved in that process. It wasn't by myself. I was involved with different activists. And it was there that I realized that we have politicians that represent us that really don't represent us, because when it's time to fight, you have to take the fights. And there's people that have the love for the community, and they're mostly activists. They don't get paid, they do it for free, that went and took their time from their life and decided to invest into advocating for the community. And now the city, the police department is taking 30 days. But for people that are already getting ready to be deported, they agree to sign in 7 days.
That's a great achievement. Thank you for doing that. I know one of the requirements for U visa is, they have to be helpful. They have to be helpful for finding the criminals and discovering the criminal activity, and with being a witness or maybe testimony that would probably find them for prosecuting more people. And I know that a lot of undocumented immigrants were afraid to talk to the police, and they were essentially hiding because they were afraid of the immigration consequences. So, did you notice there's a big help in that category, and it's helping police in catching the real criminals in the system and not them?
See, we have a big problem because people of color live in very poor neighborhoods. Poor neighborhoods have a higher rate in crime. So we have to see where the problem comes from. It's not that we look for it or it is random. It happens because of the neighborhoods where we are forced to live. We live there because that is where we can afford to live. And unfortunately, we are exposed to being victims of crimes. And in the past, people were very afraid to report crimes, and that was the reason why they passed the U visa deal. But I think that in order for us to be able to fix a problem, we have to realize where it comes from. I always think, how do you fix the problem? You can't fix the problem until you change the education system. We have to be educated in order for us to earn more money and live in different places. But until then, we're going to be exposed. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of politicians don't realize that that is the reason why we have the problems we have as a community. And sometimes we don't even realize. I don't think a lot of people think about that.
It takes certain people and certain personalities to attract and help everybody in the community. And I think you are this kind of person that's definitely out there for fighting for people and for their rights, and definitely for people to be successful in this country. A lot of businesses fail, in the first years of starting the business, and a lot of them are, remain successful because of that. So, do you have certain personality traits that you would believe making you successful and approachable and personable that people can trust in the community?
I'm honest, and when I give an opinion, when somebody asks about my opinion, I say it without a bias. I have nothing to gain by somebody failing or being successful. So I just say what I think, and I always get into their shoes. I believe that they say in Mexico, there is no secret between the sun and the earth. In one way or another, you find the truth. And when somebody gives you the wrong advice, you will sooner or later find out. And then you resent that. You think, why would you do that? And from my own experience, that when I wanted to start a business, other people tried to discourage me. They would say, oh, it's going to be tough. You should just get a good job. And I always thought, how can they know what I'm capable of doing? They had no right to tell me that. So when people come over and tell me their dreams, I encourage them. I tell them it might not be easy. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice. But if you really love that, if you if you think you will regret not doing it in the future, you have to do it. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you regret it or you do it again. And the worst thing that you can do is that you go back to the job or the profession that you were doing before. And on that, I think that people know that I'm just going to say what I think. And sometimes I say things to people that they don't want to hear. But and I tell you this with the best intention. You want to be successful? Don't start drinking at 11. And I have had people that call me later and they say, thank you. I appreciate that you told me that. Might not be what I wanted to hear at the time, but I appreciate it anyways. And I know a lot of people that have pursued their dream. And there's people that tell me their dreams, and I tell them, next year you will see me and you will be doing the same thing you're doing now. Because I can tell right away who's willing to pursue their dream and who isn't. But it's nice to have a dream. The one thing that I think is beautiful out of human beings is that we can dream, but we can choose whether you want to pursue your dream. And the beauty about America is that if you decide to pursue your dream, you will accomplish it. A difference from other places in the world that you have a dream, and even if you work hard, you will never get it. So that's what keeps us here.
I totally agree. There were so many people in my life. They tried to discourage me and stop me from what I'm doing. And then I get that feistiness in me, and stubbornness would never stop that to have that done. So I thank you so much for doing this amazing job and helping us immigrants thrive in this country. And there are so many great things ahead of us, right? We're never going to give up, are we?
We built this country. And this is the reason why America is successful, because of people like us that come here, and we are willing to work more than 16 hours a day sometimes to be successful. We want to produce, we want to be positive, and we want to contribute something to the economy and the society. Without us, this country would not be the same. Sometimes society forgets that, but we all came to pursue a dream. And even if they want to kill our dream, nobody is going to be successful, because there is more people in America that believe that we are an asset to this country than people that believe that we are a liability. We are an asset. And we as immigrants have to realize that. Nobody can stop you other than your fear and yourself. So I tell people, if you have a dream, pursue it. Nobody. Trump is not going to stop you. Immigration is not going to stop you. You have to focus on where you're going. That's it. Everything else is just noise.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Let's keep that dream alive and let's never give up. As I mentioned earlier, we are here at the Plaza del Sol. Please tell us what is it exactly and what people can find here and where we can find you online.
We are located on 990 Payne Avenue in the east side of St. Paul. And what we are is a group of small businesses that we have a couple of restaurants. We have a juice bar. We have a barber school. We have a rotisserie chicken store. And what we do is we get into a business that will have a lower overhead than if you were a standalone business. We share overhead, we share rents, we share utilities, and that makes it more feasible for a business to survive. And starting a new small business is not easy, but it helps when you have other people that go through the same thing with you. We have a Facebook, it's called Plaza del Sol, St. Paul, and you can visit us. We have great food.
Well, definitely have to stop by and try this amazing food. And thank you so much for your time. Good luck with everything, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much.
And welcome back to Immigrant Invincible. Ryan Garza here with Aneta Toporowska. Wow, what an amazing interview. I'm not going to lie, I got chills a couple of times listening to her talk.
What a sensitive and intelligent human being. I just love her.
And so as we wrap up here, one of the things that we wanted to accomplish with the podcast, as we're going along here, as we're talking to all these remarkable individuals, is to figure out a little bit about what it is that makes them tick and what's made them successful. And also maybe figure out a couple of things that they have in common. And one of the coolest things that I found out about Sonia is that she's a strong believer in being direct and giving your opinion and saying what you think. And I felt like maybe that was something that you guys had a little bit in common.
Yeah, we definitely do. I'm really honest, and I always try to encourage everybody that crosses my path to tell them how it really is. You know, people are scared of pursuing their dreams. People are scared to, go out of their comfort zone, and they're discouraged by everybody around them. And, in my life in the past, I encountered tons of people like that, and that never stopped me. You have to believe in yourself. You have to pursue your dreams, and you have to believe that you will accomplish that. Like Sonia said, the only thing that can stop us is our own fear. It's we are our own enemy, and we definitely shouldn't be.
I loved how her answer to people doubting her was to think to herself, how can they know what I'm capable of?
Yeah, definitely. We have to show the world that immigrants are assets, not liabilities. And overcoming those challenges and proving them wrong would definitely help us.
The other thing that I thought was really cool about Sonia's philosophy is the idea that once you decide to do something, to just focus on that and to work hard and to decide that everything else is just noise.
Definitely. Like Sonia mentioned in her interview, we built this country. We are willing to work, contribute so many positive aspects in this society. So yeah, I agree with her. Everything's just noise. So keep dreaming, keep believing in yourself, and never give up.
And speaking of hardworking immigrants, you said you got a busy summer ahead of you. Hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that in the next episode. In the meantime, that's going to do it for this episode of Immigrant Invincible. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us.
Immigrant Invincible is a production of Top Ventures and NonPod, the nonprofit podcast community. Subscribe now on iTunes, on Android, or by email at immigrantinvincible.com. Because we're in this together. NonPod turns your email newsletter, blog, or video content into a more powerful, more personal, more intimate, on-demand listening experience. Your podcast, your story, your voice, simplified, amplified. Learn more now at nonpod.com.